Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're doing something a little bit different. We're taking what usually looks like a super dry set of textbook grammar rules, and we're totally transforming them. We're turning them into a powerful everyday toolkit. Because honestly, this isn't just about passing a test. It's about learning how to tell better stories, how to report facts without losing their punch, and ultimately, how to connect with people on a much deeper level. We are going to literally decode the mechanics of communication. Okay, let's dive right into our agenda. We've got a really logical progression mapped out for us today. First up, we're translating direct to indirect speech. Then we'll tackle mastering questions and commands. After that, it's all about crafting powerful beginnings and endings. And finally, we'll wrap things up with the perfect personal letter. Let's get into it. Section 1, translating direct to indirect speech. To lay the groundwork here, our source defines direct speech as quoting the actual literal words someone said. It's like you're putting a microphone right in front of their mouth. Indirect or reported speech, though, that's when you step back and report those words in the third person. And because you're reporting it after the fact, you've got to make some necessary shifts in tenses and pronouns just to keep the whole narrative logical. Now notice the shift here. Take a look at the simple present tense works in that direct quote. Anu works hard. But the moment we drop those quotation marks to report it indirectly, that verb has to shift one tense back into the simple past, becoming worked. He said that Anu worked hard. It's a super subtle mechanical change, right? But it instantly transforms you from a direct observer into a narrator. To make this a whole lot easier, the source provides a fantastic cheat sheet. When your reporting verb is in the past tense, your modal verbs and your time markers, well, they have to slide backward in time right alongside the main verb. So can becomes could and may becomes might. But you really want to pay special attention to those time markers. Today has to shift to that day, and tomorrow becomes the day after. And if you think about it, that makes perfect sense. If you report what someone said a week later, well, tomorrow is literally no longer accurate.
Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering Questions and Commands.
For reporting questions, the text outlines a really clear three-step process. Step 1, you literally cannot use the word say for a question. You have to swap it out for questioning verbs like ask or inquire. Step 2, you've got to change that interrogative verb order back to an affirmative one. And finally, step 3, if you're dealing with a simple yes or no question, one that doesn't have a who, what, or where, you absolutely must insert the word if. So here is the absolutely crucial point. Look at the direct question, where do you live? When we report that, the active pointed inquiry kind of just flattens out. It turns into the affirmative statement, where I lived. You wouldn't say, he asked where did I live. You just state the fact of the question. He asked where I lived. It smooths out the narrative perfectly. Now, when we shift gears to reporting commands and requests, the rules shift yet again. First off, drop the quotes entirely. The structure becomes an object followed by an infinitive with the word to. But here's the fun part. Instead of just relying on the boring old words said, our source gives us this whole arsenal of powerful verbs to nail the exact tone. We're talking words like advise, command, forbid, warn. Think about it. The mother forbade them to go out carries so much more narrative weight than just, the mother said not to go out, doesn't it? Okay, Section 3, Powerful Beginnings and Endings. So now that we've totally mastered the micro-mechanics of sentences, let's zoom out to the macro level. Our source specifically warns that opening sentences should never, ever be flat. Because, let's be real, if you don't arouse interest immediately, the reader is just going to walk away. To avoid that, the text outlines some seriously dynamic strategies for your hook. You can use shock tactics, you can plunge directly into the heart of the subject, or hit them with a surprise attack, a witticism, a cliffhanger, a question, or use really descriptive words to instantly paint an atmosphere. This quote by William Cowper is a brilliant example of that. God made the country and man made the town. It perfectly illustrates using a wittily phrased idea as a hook. It immediately sets up the stark, intriguing contrast, acting as the perfect springboard into a composition. It's elegant and it hooks you instantly. But, listen, a great start is absolutely nothing without a great finish. Just as you hook them at the start, the source stresses that a good composition has to end firmly and strongly. You need to leave the reader with a surprise, maybe a climax, or a totally fresh, original point of view on the topic. The absolute worst thing you can do here, according to the text, is to just sort of slowly fade away and ramble. You want to make the reader stop and think as they hit that final period. Finally, Section 4, the perfect personal letter. let's apply all this structural knowledge to a highly practical, everyday skill. Now, I know we communicate mostly through texts and emails these days, but the source reminds us that a written letter projects the unique personality of the writer. Unlike formal business correspondence, personal letters are meant for relations, friends, colleagues, or acquaintances, so they require a simple, informal style. But, and this is a big but, do not confuse an informal tone with a lack of structure. These letters still demand strict adherence to formatting rules to be clear and impactful. The source actually provides these exact, acceptable layout models. And just look at how meticulously structured they are. They show precisely where the sender's address, the date, and the salutation need to sit on the page. Whether you're using a more traditional format or a modern box-type layout, consistency in this structure is exactly what separates a really polished communicator from a sloppy one. And a huge part of that polish is consistency in your tone, right from the first word down to the very last. Notice how the greeting mathematically has to match the subscription or the sign-off based on the relationship? If you're writing to a near relative, you might open with "Dear Mummy" and close with "Yours affectionately." But if you're writing to a friend, the tone shifts slightly and you'd close with "Yours sincerely." Getting that pairing wrong creates this immediate, jarring disconnect for the person reading it. The text also gives us some very specific, essential rules to ensure your letter is proper. First, never put your name above your address. Always write out the full date, like 30th August 2019, instead of using those informal numbers with slashes. Make sure you use clear paragraphs. And finally, always conclude with a friendly sentence conveying love and respect before signing off. All right, to tie all of these communication lessons together into the real world, let's look at this wildly dramatic story from the source materials practice section. It's the tale of a highly successful lawyer. His doctor warns him that his brain is literally going to give way from extreme overwork. Naturally, he ignores the warning. The next thing he knows, he wakes up on a train. His entire past, his memory, his identity, completely blotted out. All he has is $3,000 in his pocket. So he's forced to adopt a totally new identity he finds in a newspaper ad, becoming Edward Pinkhammer. He spends these glorious, carefree days in New York, completely disconnected from his old life, to the point where he can't even recognize his own wife. It is a crazy, gripping story about what happens when our mental faculties and our ability to communicate just completely break down. So as you sit down to tackle your next writing assignment, or even just a personal email, ask yourself, are you going to use this master toolkit to connect clearly with the world around you, or are you letting yourself get too overworked and disconnected to communicate effectively, Mr. Pinkhammer? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.